Okay. Yeah, that's a good look. We'll go ahead and start this. And that seems like a good look. I'm going to go closer. I'm trying to shoot for the end of the bookends. Now, oh, geez.
Easy now.
Easy there, Buttercup. And this little bitch, which doesn't seem to want to cooperate at all. How can, so the camera is not seeing the same orientation that the device is, because the device
Yeah,
clearly.
that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Okay.
It's fucking upside down.
Yeah, it is fucking upside down.
It's fucking pissing me off, too. But we'll just flip the video. I'm not giving a fuck anymore. And we are shooting. All right.
All right.
So hopefully that's lined up. I'm going to make a little adjustment here. Because somebody's crying.
That's a nice sized tablet, by the way. I like that.
Yeah,
I
I'll tell you what.
A little bit bigger.
I had one prior that was I dug, but yeah. Do you have notes or anything? Or put it all in your head?
Well, no, they're on the table at home. But
Okay.
luckily, I had a feeling that might happen. So a few days ago, I took a snapshot of my notes. So
now you have.
So when I forgot them, because it was almost not a matter of if, I still have a reference here.
All right, so that's shooting, that is shooting, this is shooting. Oh man, that looks good. God,
Okay.
I'll tell you what, that's. I don't think I like record album bookends, but I like bookends.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I like bookends too.
Oh, that light coming off of that.
Oh,
That just. I'm sure that TV's even plugged in. Let's see. Deal with that little bitch. Right about now.
There we go.
This is what is beautiful about having a big space. All right, let's see if we can get enough to have something get out there. I don't know why I would put that so far away.
no need.
No need.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm just.
Need a second?
How do I want to kick this off? I got something.
Okay.
All right. Does that look like it's at an angle?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
No.
All right.
No.
Hey, welcome, friends and fellow adventurers, to our, who knows, maybe inaugural episode of, we are calling it something with bookends.
Yeah, we haven't decided yet, but.
We started with record album bookends.
Yeah, neither one of us are in love with that, though.
Right, and maybe it's musical journeys and bookends.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Something along that line.
So, but really, we're all about talking freely about music and our experiences with it.
Yeah. Well, and why don't you tell about your experience at the house concert you went to? Because we haven't spoken.
Right. So recently went to a concert in a beautiful old mansion in downtown Toledo. We come to you, by the way, from Toledo, Ohio, where I believe, having just moved back here to my hometown, that it is pound for pound one of the best music cities in America, certainly in the Midwest. And I've been to Austin, I've been to Nashville. Nashville, give it a run. Austin, it's weird down there these days. But anyway, but had an opportunity to see the artist Carsey Blanton, and came to Carsey by way of a YouTube video about a John Prine song that she had written, and so I thought, wow, I'm really digging her. I would go see her, thinking maybe she'll come to Ann Arbor, maybe she'll come to Columbus, come to some college town, and but then I find out she's coming to Toledo, Ohio, and coming to an event at a place called Over Yonder House. Over Yonder House, what the heck is that? And you go to find it, you can't because it's somewhat virtual, although it does exist. I should have looked up the organizer's name. I want to say it's Rob or Bob. Great guy. This particular concert was in somebody else's house than where he normally has them. But the idea of the home concert kind of intrigued us, and so did the music of Carsey Blanton. She was awesome, singer-songwriter, has a very unique style, a lot of different influences, but I highly recommend you check her out. And, we're all about new music, but that was really neat. It was cool to see her, up close, and then, there's the merch table, so there's the opportunity to meet the artist, and that's always fun. And she was
And support her by
yeah
buying merch.
right, exactly. In her case, her whole collection of CDs, a great collection, and we'll probably play some of that over top here or insert it into a break somehow. But yeah.
How many CDs does she have?
I want to say it's 7 or 9.
Okay.
And I'll be sure
that's
goes
odd.
with you. Well played, sir.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so, and, speaking of recent shows, talked about this in the last, what we call the preseason podcast, our pre-episode 1. And I'd gone to see Wynton Marsalis. I happened to catch, because a friend of mine recommended a YouTuber by the name of Rick Beato. Beato? I hope I'm saying that right, Rick. You are an incredible interviewer, and he had an interview with Derek Trucks, and Derek Trucks was talking about his jazz influences. And you and I were talking about the intersection of jazz and rock and roll.
Yep. And pretty much everything.
Right. Well, and what Wynton said as he was introducing his music is everything really comes from the blues. That's really it's America's language to the world, and so jazz, rock, just so much comes from the
country,
basic, country.
Yeah.
Country for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly R&B and almost every derivative is rooted in American. Blues music.
Yeah.
So going way back. What kind of small concerts have you experienced that kind of really grabbed you? We're so close to the artist.
Well, I had one. It was at the Village Idiot, and the way that it came about was very similar to your experience with Carsey Blanton. I had just discussed, and I don't even remember where. I think I read an article about Nora Jane Struthers, and I was thinking, wow, if she comes to the Arc or somewhere, I got to go see her. Well, wouldn't you know that I looked up her tour schedule, and like 2 weeks hence, she was playing at the Village Idiot in Maumee.
Same
which,
kind of deal.
Yeah, very small little, and I met her before the show, and she was fantastic, and her husband, I'm not sure if they were married then or just married, but anyhow, her husband, Joe, great people, and ended up going to see her again at the Arc the following year, and it was just fantastic.
So for reference, wherever you might be in the world listening to us, the Arc is a great venue in a great college town of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And even though we are both big-time Ohio State fans, we love Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
We don't actually hate Michigan outside of the football rivalry.
Just outside of,
but we love the Ann Arbor scene.
Yeah.
And particularly the music scene. And then the Village Idiot is right here in Greater Toledo in the wonderful small town of Maumee.
Right.
Ohio. It's like name to the Maumee River, which starts somewhere. I'm not sure if it intersects the Wabash, but it comes out of Indiana. And,
Yeah. It goes
and
at least as far as Fort Wayne.
right,
Yeah.
and comes all the way to Toledo. Is at the mouth, I guess.
Yep.
You call that of the
Yep.
Maumee River.
Yep.
Yeah. So Maumee and the Village Idiot is just a great venue. That's where I first saw Bobby May, who's a great local blues, R&B, rock guitar player, and just all around
Yeah.
great music guy. Everybody in town in the music scene loves Bobby, and Bobby's such a great example for how to be just generous with your stage and
Yep.
stuff.
Back to the Ark, I don't think I ever told you this story, but I just found out in the last couple of years that it started off in the mid 1960s as a non-denominational place where students could go. As you can imagine, Ann Arbor in the 60s was kind of a probably a rough place for
Rebellious
people,
and
right, for
revolutionary.
people who had never, been away from home. So somebody started the Ark as just a place where people could come and kind of get their bearings,
Yeah.
and they started playing music there, and that just took off. And it's not in the same place, or didn't start in the same place where it is now in
Okay.
downtown. But now it's like a 400 and change seat theater, and there's not a bad seat in the house.
That's a pretty small.
It's
venue.
very small. The farthest away from the stage would probably be the equivalent of like 4 rows back at an arena,
Sure.
and just a wonderful place. And people love playing there. People just
Oh, I bet.
absolutely love playing there. And I've seen some great bands that Ian Hunter I saw there.
Is that right?
Yeah. And
So yeah, just for reference, Ian Hunter was the front man for Mott the Hoople back in the early '70s.
yeah, glam
early
rock.
60s.
Yeah.
Was kind of with Mick Ronson, the kind of the beginning of glam rock. A Bowie offshoot,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they were joined at the hip, and yeah.
Kind of Bowie gave Mott their start, and Mott gave Queen their start, and it's just
Yeah.
so.
And on it goes.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting how some of those musical roots happen. I mean, you could probably argue that some of the, if not the look, some of the sentiment of the music could have been a little bit more, Kinks and Who,
Oh yeah.
oriented.
Right. Yeah.
When you go back and listen to the early Kinks or the early Who, you get this sense of just rawness that I really love. I'm gonna actually cut the break here. Turn.
You are coming through really loud in this, like too loud.
Okay. So good. All right. I'm going to take a real quick shot at, I'm not going to play it through, but, when you hear the Who, Tommy On, it's almost a different band from when you heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the beginning of a song just really grabs you and sets you in a direction.
Right.
That hadn't been done, and that was their trademark. For Pete to completely change how he approached music and writing,
Mm-hmm.
you probably know as much about than anybody.
And Bowie covered that song too. So,
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That and Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere. So, we were talking about Bowie and Mott being kind of the next, not necessarily the first generation of the British invasion, but right on the heels of it. And Bowie's pinup album, he paid homage to the Kinks and the Who and a lot of others that shame on me I can't remember right now. But and it's interesting that I was just reading an old Cream magazine article from the 1970s where Roger Daltrey was talking about how in the resurgence of the mod movement in England, that it's kind of sad that kids these days don't have their own thing, and they kind of have to go back and be sentimental about the mod movement that we had. And I kind of wonder if glam wasn't the next generation, an offshoot and their own thing 5-6 years down the road
Right.
after the mods, which was of course the Small Faces and the Kinks and all those great bands. Not
Right.
necessarily the Beatles or Stones, but
Right. No. It's completely different stuff.
right.
And that was what I was trying to capture there with Can't Explain, is that that way of kind of jabbing at the notes and at the emphasis of the of the conversation.
Yeah.
Um,
And the Kinks did that too. With
Absolutely.
You Really Got Me,
Right.
and same.
Yeah, it's almost like the music is punching at you,
Right.
in some regard. Those were the were the hard asses.
Yeah,
right?
well, they were just less than 20 years out of World War II, and were growing up in bombed out streets and buildings, and so
Right.
yeah, it was a rough place to grow up. Even
Sure was.
even if you were middle class or whatever, you're still growing up in bombed out London. And
So as always, we'll be a little all over the place, but I was I'm a big John Prine fan, and as we bounce a little bit here, I was listening to simultaneously around the same time that these happened to intersect. I was John Prine's 74th birthday celebration was a couple weeks ago, and they had a bunch of folks at the Ryman. One of which doing a song that I really hadn't paid much attention to, called "Unwed Fathers," and so the band, She's With Me, She Is Me. Who am I thinking of with?
Well, it's the
Nickel
band,
Creek. What's the chick from Nickel Creek?
Sarah Watkins.
Sarah Watkins.
Yeah.
So what is that band called that she sings with the two other ladies whose names I'm forgetting?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
That's.
We know. Yeah. We both know we need to.
Can you look that up real quick?
Yeah.
We'll just break right there. We'll come back and get that. You just Sarah Watkins might
Yep.
be the fastest one.
Nickel Creek, Decemberist, Jackson Brown. Come on. Sarah Watkins, Midnight Sun. I wonder if they recorded anything. Let's see what the discography says here. Solo career. Who the hell is that? Okay, here we go. Watkins family.
Right. Should be following that.
Brother Sister, Volume 2, which is this year. I guess she hasn't.
Okay, so maybe go back. Maybe I don't know. It's definitely her.
I know. Yeah.
I thought.
Okay. Mutual Admiration Society, but that's not everything. That's a great band too.
My fucking end on this thing doesn't work. Just YouTube Unwed Fathers.
There we go. I actually have YouTube open already, so.
You might even throw in Sarah Watkins into that. Unwed Fathers, Sarah Watkins. This is all being recorded, so I guess I've got a lot of foul language to get out of here.
Sarah.
Sarah Jarosz is
Yeah.
Sarah Jarosz, Sarah Watkins, and I can't pronounce
Amanda
it.
Shires is the other one.
No,
No.
no.
Nickel Creek.
They performed for at the John Prine birthday thing. Why would the fuck that not be up there?
Jazz concert.
It's not gonna. If you're going down that far, it's not gonna be there. This is
John Prine, Margot Price. Well,
No.
that's John Prine now.
right.
Hmm.
He also.
Well, damn.
I'm with her. That's what it's called. I'm with her. Just look up I'm with her.
Okay.
Fuck me. God bless, man.
I'm with her. Yeah, you got your glasses because I can't read that.
I'm with her is an American band consisting of singer-songwriters and multi-instrumentalists to rock and Sarah Jarosz and Aofi.
Oh
Udonovan.
yeah.
How do you say her
She's
name?
really good. I want to say Alfie actually.
Alfie.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Alfie.
sure.
Alfie O'Donovan.
Yeah.
Alfie O'Donovan. That's her name.
Yep.
So what the fuck, man?
Yeah. Why is that so hard to find?
Oh, I'm with her. Unwed fathers.
Have you ever skipped voting for judges on election day? This November, don't.
Thank you. Is that fine?
Volume's on this side.
Would you like it louder or softer?
Like me.
He sits there waiting, family way. Goodbye, brother. Tell mom I love her. Tell all the others I'll ride someday.
Have you ever heard the song?
No.
Great song.
Teenage love to an unwed mother.
I don't know if it gets any better than that sounding wise.
Yeah.
All right, that's my point.
Like some
You can check it out later. So anyway,
I leave that up. I will.
yeah. So I'm with her does this version of Unwed Fathers on at the Ryman, just sounding otherworldly. And a few days later, I happened to catch the I don't know, Netflix or wherever did the documentary with David Crosby.
Right.
I forget what it's called, but he was talking about his musical influences were jazz,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
but
Which is
then-
kind of surprising when you told me that.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
you know.
And then he was basically doing third part of a harmony
Yeah.
with the Everly Brothers,
Yeah.
as part of what he was doing, and so then I heard this a couple days later, and I thought these guys are kind of the modern day Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Yeah.
For bluegrass, for lack of a better
Right,
categorization. Just incredible, and we'll play this too, hopefully over. But just incredible sound, and I we make comparisons.
Yeah.
Because we cross so many genres.
Yep.
But it's pretty easy to see where the connections are.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it's interesting when you think of all the people who crossed Jack White. You wouldn't think of the White Stripes and Jack's solo, and then he does folk stuff,
Right.
and acoustic and early 20th century stuff.
Right.
I remember back in the days where iTunes mixes were all the big thing, and who's on your iTunes mix, and who's on your, well, Ryan Adams, somebody asked him, and he listened, and whoever the interviewer was said, that doesn't make any sense at all. Where's the connection there? And he said the connection is it's all damn good music.
Right.
That's the only connection you need.
Yeah.
Because it's got to be good.
Right. Exactly. And you know, talk about Jack and his collaborations. You know, collaborates with the Stones. Collaborates with Pete Townsend.
Yep.
Collaborates with you know, on another documentary kind of approach with The Edge and Jimmy Page.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And then maybe one of the more surprising, as you say, going towards folk, you know, collaborates with, she just passed all of a sudden, Country Star.
Oh yeah, Loretta.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In my mind, I'm thinking the
Yeah,
L. I
and
can't put my
you could tell
my
he
mind on
truly
Loretta.
adored Loretta. And
Well, he absolutely adored Loretta. He worshipped at her feet, and and he was damn good for her because he kind of gave her a little revitalization charge.
Yep.
Seemed like she got pretty excited about working with him. That's
I
neat to
read
see.
something about her. I think it was something that it was after
I
she.
gotta stay right on that, Mike.
It was after right after she passed. John Carter Cash told a story of. This was long after his dad had passed, but she came up in her tour bus and she wanted to do some recording in Johnny Cash's cabin.
Right.
And he looked out the window at 3 a.m. and there's Loretta Lynn, barefoot, just kind of twirling around in the grass. And like a teenager, and she's in her 80s at this point. And the next day, he brought it up, and what are you doing, Loretta? I was dancing with your dad.
Ah,
And the next night, she did it again.
how about that?
Just a wonderful person.
Well,
Totally.
it's I think the warmest part about the music business is when you see kindness. in
Yeah.
it. You talk about Prime, you know, he was a guy who just people loved because of his kindness.
Right.
And the list goes on. You can
Right.
kind of see the
The
people.
story that Todd Snyder told about the driver in Europe getting them lost, and John
Right.
was just driving around was fun.
Right,
Everybody wanted to kill this kid,
right.
except John. Driving around's fun.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of stories about the nice guys.
Yeah.
And in fact, watching this this interview, this Rick Beato guy was doing with I hope I'm saying that right. Was doing with Derek Trucks. It was just Derek is completely humble, matter of fact. You know, he was talking about some of the old jazz greats, and he was hanging out with his uncle Butch Trucks, who with J-Mo were the two drummers for the Allman Brothers, and I'm gonna forget the drummer, the jazz drummer that that Derek had gotten to know of. He'd gone and seen him because the Allman Brothers would play a lot in New York.
Okay.
What was that?
The Fillmore?
The Fillmore, thank you. No, it wasn't the Fillmore, it was the Beacon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they would go back to the Beacon Theater every year
Okay.
for several years. So when he was playing with the Allman Brothers, he did that. And they would have a lot of days off, and he would see a lot of jazz musicians playing,
Yeah.
you know, in New York. This was back in the you know, late 90s, early 2000s. A lot
Okay.
of those guys were still around.
Right.
And one such was just a legendary jazz drummer whose name is escaping me right now. But that's less important to the story as the fact that that Derek happened to be talking about this guy to his uncle Butch and J-Mo, and they were like, "Oh, we know him," and he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And then they had a chance to meet him, and these guys just you know, it was great seeing each other again, and they'd gone back to the 70s, and they just
Right.
idolized this guy. And he said that you know, my uncle Butch was never a very humble guy, but in front of this guy, he just basically sat on the ground and worshipped at his feet. We all have idols, and
Sure.
you know, the great ones, you know, hold somebody else in great respect. And of course, Jerry Lee Lewis just passed.
Right. Yeah.
And he was an idol to many a musician,
Yeah.
and particularly those who were the more showman.
Well, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, we talked about this. We were out to dinner the day that he passed, and on our way home from the restaurant, I had on Outlaw Country. I think it was Mojo Nixon. It might have been Dallas. Either they were just eulogizing him, and it was hilarious and touching all at once. About the man was a biblical force of nature, and it was everybody just adored him.
It's crazy because he
I don't want to say adored him because he wasn't a warm and fuzzy guy.
No, he wasn't a warm and
means.
fuzzy guy. He was very polarizing.
Right, but
very polarizing.
he was respected at the very least.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he got flack not only for marrying his cousin,
His 13-year-old cousin.
Right. His 13-year-old cousin.
Who said that she was the adult in the marriage.
Right. And he would go on to marry 7 more times, I think.
It's something
6
like
or 7
that,
more
yeah.
times, yeah. So it's not like, the guy, he was who he was.
Yeah.
But anyway, but the other thing he really took flack for is being accused of copying Little Richard.
Right.
And one could argue that, he did much the way that, Elvis stole from the black community. One of my great stories in life is the opportunity to meet Little Richard, and I'll just insert this here. I'm sure I told you the story, but I had an opportunity.
You didn't tell them though.
Right, I didn't tell you guys, so I will real quick. Great story. So for a while, Little Richard in the early, for a lot of years, from the mid '70s to the early '80s, he kind of went underground, and nobody. I mean, he was basically on the preacher circuit. He was a pretty fire and brimstone kind of, as you can imagine, colorful kind of a preacher, Pentecostal preacher, and he happened to be preaching at a church in Columbus, and I happened to be selling tennis shoes at a place, I kid you not, and they still exist today. They're franchise based out of San Diego, Second Soul Athletic Shoe Store. Well, here
there's one in Perrysburg.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Second Soul, their franchises, and the guy in Columbus got a hold of this idea from this group in San Diego, and they were for the longest time the only ones here in the Midwest. Anyway, you can imagine a preacher seeing a shoe store called Second Soul, and it intrigued him, and to my great fortune, because nobody knew who Little Richard was, and but I did. Thank goodness. But I didn't right away, of course. Here comes a guy, and
there's no way that
at
this
that point,
is,
there's no way to make the connection. But I sold him 2 pairs of white on white K-Swiss tennis shoes. They were exceedingly comfortable shoes. They were pretty new in the market, and and we had these square cube things that you sat down on, and you maybe bend over with to tie your shoe or whatever, and that was it. And a real tight weave carpet, and he gets these things on. He starts dancing around. He does one woo, and I realize who I'm dealing with there. And and then he signs he writes a check, and we accept his check. Who knows? I'm certain it was okay. This was right before he did the movie Down and Out in Beverly Hills. That was kind of his comeback to reintroduce himself to an American audience,
a whole new younger audience
who had no idea.
Yeah.
But Little Richard was one of the founders of rock and roll.
Yeah.
Certainly with Jerry Lee and several others.
Yep.
And he was gone but not forgotten. But certainly he was the influence on the Beatles probably as much as any.
Oh yeah,
as
absolutely.
anybody else.
Yeah.
The Beatles toured with
And the
them.
Stones.
And the Stones.
Sure.
Yeah. They
I'd like to get your thoughts on this. I'm sure Steve Earle, a couple days after Jerry Lee died, was eulogizing him on his show, and he said, kind of how perspectives change.
Right.
And he said Jerry Lee and Johnny and Carl Perkins and those guys, when they were working for Sun Records, they considered themselves making country music for a white audience.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And we look back now, and that wasn't really the case, because at the same time you had, Chuck Berry,
Right.
Little Richards, all those guys who were doing it, just not necessarily at Sun Records. There were a lot of them was more blues oriented up in Chicago.
Right.
But nonetheless, looking back, what they weren't really doing what they thought that they were doing, or at least we have a very different perspective on it today.
Right, right, and because it wasn't the kind of country that had been seen before, and maybe as far as they knew, they were innovating within country. I doubt that, because they probably knew from whence the music
Oh
came.
yeah,
But
yeah,
they were probably hearing it and listening to it, and it was influential on them.
right.
Just the same way that old blues artists were influential on the Stones, and
Right. Well, and I can't remember which radio station it was, but a story about Johnny Cash falling asleep at night. And back then, with no FCC, the radio stations were free to blast with all the power that they had. And down in Arkansas, he could pick up the stations, the AM stations from Chicago and other places in the Midwest. So that influenced him.
Okay, I can't listen to that story without picturing in my mind Steve Martin at the beginning of the journey,
Yeah.
listening to the radio, and
Yeah.
and realizing that there was a world out there.
Yep.
Good comedic stuff. Comedy and rock and roll, boy,
Oh,
they sure intersect.
Yeah, well, I mean, we start with the Blues Brothers. I mean, good.
Well, you can start with with Monty Python.
Yeah. Or I mean, if you want to go back even further, Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll. I mean, you can go all the way back.
You can go all the way
But yeah,
back.
you're right. It's a long tradition.
Right. Turn it up to 11.
Yep.
Can you just make 10 louder?
Yeah. But this goes to 11.
This goes to 11. It's great stuff.
Yep.
So what else are you thinking about these days?
What else am I thinking about these days? I'm thinking about we're going to see Paul Thorne in a few months here. That's
Right.
going to creep right up on us.
Do we need to start buying tickets?
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea, but like we said, it's only a 400-seat theater. So,
Right. Yeah. You want to.
So probably a good idea.
Right.
Yeah.
Get ahead of that curve.
Yeah, listening to a lot of Paul Thorne lately. John Entwistle, believe it or not, has a new album coming out.
That's
So,
interesting.
The
For
Ox.
those of you who don't know, he's long passed.
Yep, 2000. You died on your birthday.
Did he really?
2002. Yeah.
Okay. We probably didn't say this before because we did an episode before this, so we didn't explain a lot about us. But he would happen to know my birthday because Doug and I have been friends for 55
Yep.
years, going on 56. So a long time friendship, yeah. So it would, in case you think it's weird, we're not brothers.
No.
We're like brothers. But anyway, and Doug had the opportunity to see John Entwistle just how long before he passed?
13 months.
13
It was in May of 2001.
Wow. So yeah, and John Entwistle, of course, being the beloved bass player, many consider to be the greatest bass player in rock and roll. The bass is interpreted so many different ways.
And well, he was accountable for a lot of that, of reinterpreting how.
Right.
And Townsend will tell you that it was because they only had two guitarists in the band, him and Entwistle, and Pete was it still is, primarily a rhythm guitarist, and
Right.
so John Entwistle was the first lead bassist, basically, in rock.
It's interesting you say that because going back to where we started this conversation with Carsey Blanton, she has a great bass player, Joe, and I think they've got a drummer that goes with them, but depending on the venue,
Right.
being a house concert, that didn't make sense. But Carsey is not going to be accused of being, throwing down any crazy lead licks. So a lot of the lead play is done by Joe on the bass, and I just think that's a cool way of kind of mixing things up.
Yeah, I like it, but
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of that low end, that
Yeah.
the power
Right.
that's inherent in it.
Right. Yeah. You can look to the Police,
Sure.
in much the same way, or Rush or Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
that's-
wherever you've got a strong bass player, you know, you're gonna have, you know, elements of that bass, you know,
Right.
taking a more significant role.
And we were talking the last time about how in the 80s in particular, it seemed like that the bassist was becoming a more important
Right,
member of the band. I
Right.
mean, not counting, of course, McCartney, but McCartney was also the songwriter, vocalist.
right.
Um,
McCartney was the kind of bass player that Levon Helm was a drummer.
yes, yeah,
Better than most people would give him credit for.
yeah. And I didn't really realize that until whatever it was, 10, 15 years ago when they started remastering and remixing the old Beatles albums. And I bought those and listened to them, and he comes through a lot clearer
Right.
in the mix than he did before. And yeah, he was doing some amazing stuff.
And he wasn't a natural bass player, he was a guitar
No,
player.
right?
And a
Yeah,
piano player.
Yeah.
He grew up on the piano and the guitar.
yep.
Not being able to read a lick of music.
Right. Yeah. Well, a lot of Pete Townsend also,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure I don't think Keith Richards can either. So
I would say the vast majority of great rock and rollers cannot.
right,
You know,
right. They know the chords, and
sometimes the vocalists are more inclined to read
Yeah.
music. Sometimes.
yeah, go figure.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, and that is curious about some, you know, some musicians. It would seem to me, and I know that speaking of Wynton Marsalis, and I would assume it was that same Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra that Eric Clapton played with.
Wow.
And
okay.
it was great.
I bet.
But you know, Clapton just again, there's another example of just, you know, kind of sitting at the feet of
Right.
and kind of bowing down to these great, you know, musicians, and Clapton basically, you know, kind of putting himself as out of their league.
Right.
And but you know, I
Clapton
think
is an interesting character, I think, because even though taking everything into account what you just said, which is 100% true, he somehow managed to get himself a reputation as being a racist.
I never heard that.
Yeah, and I think
That
it's
seems nothing could be further from the truth.
yeah, I totally agree. But
Yeah.
apparently, back in the 70s, he made some comments, political comments about what was happening in England at the time, and people just, oh, he's a racist. You can't say that because he made
Yeah.
comments about immigrants.
Oh. Yeah,
And-
immigration and racism are two completely different things, and we'll certainly not delve
Right.
into any political conversation.
Well,
here
no,
because,
no.
Because it
But
certainly.
that's what I mean is that
obviously-
he obviously, was a huge fan of all those guys, and so yeah, for people to say, oh, I don't like Clapton, he's racist. What?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that strikes me because I see him interacting with black musicians. I see his virtual worship of guys from Robert Johnson to Bob Marley to
I can't remember the album that it was. He did an album of blues covers. It was after his Unplugged, which was,
Right.
I think, maybe even his best-selling album. Because
Right.
that was the one with the acoustic Layla
Right,
and Tears in Heaven.
right?
And I'm pretty sure it was the album right after that was an album of blues covers. And
Yep.
back at the time,
Straight
they had
blues.
VH1 had a show on it, rock critics on it, discussing stuff. And they were talking about this album, and somebody said, "I'm not even going to discuss this album because he's racist." What?
Oh, so it goes back that far.
Oh yeah. This is nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was apparently there was some, and I may get this wrong, and like I said, I don't want to delve too far into it. But it's like strikes or something going on in England in the 70s, and they were talking about people crossing the line who are immigrants, and he thought that the natural born Englishmen weren't working, blah blah blah, and so that kind of got him pegged as a racist, despite all the work that
Right.
he's done, and despite his career.
Well, sadly, we even back then, even more so today, seem to only be able to brush in broad strokes,
Right.
rather than I kind of see myself as more like a Rubik's cube. I mean, my colors are kind of
Right. Yeah.
aligned all over the
Right.
place. Not one that's solved, by the way. I've never been able to solve one.
No, me neither. Yeah. You could paint all four sides the same, and I wouldn't be able to
Right.
solve it.
Yeah.
But that's because
Here's
I'm
the
not.
stickers.
You need to be a mathematician, which brings me to somebody very recently. I can't remember who it was. pretty famous musician said that whether they realize it or not, musicians are all mathematicians.
I worked with a guy in IT. My career's been in information technology. There's a lot of mathematicians in IT. There's a lot of musicians in IT because, yeah, it comes from the same place. Math, creativity, rhythms.
Right.
I mean, it's music is completely mathematical.
Sure.
And when you think in terms of speaking different languages, uh, learning music is actually easier because it's almost like mathematically formulaic.
Right. Well, and the same thing with lyrics.
Right. Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
I can write prose fairly well, I think, but for me to try to write a song because I don't have that rhythm
Right.
innately. That's
We know.
Not
Oh,
my,
no.
Not the way that my brain is wired.
Right. Yeah, no, it's and it's interesting because that's one of the things that I have been blessed with is a rhythm. It influenced the way I played sports, particularly basketball and football. Being fluid and having a rhythm and that sort of thing. But my first instrument I picked up was the drums. Back when we were living in the
Yeah,
same
in that
neighborhood.
tiny little room off.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, my parents
I
soon
remember
came
that
to
drum
regret
kit,
that.
believe it
Yeah,
or not,
that
I
didn't
remember
last
that.
long. They found a new home for that. Kind of like the dropping the dog off at a farm
Yeah,
somewhere and
yeah.
going, oh, he ran away.
Uh-huh.
The drum kit just somehow
Yep.
left the building. But yeah, no, it was probably one of those things where I was super excited about it at first, and then we had a Christmas and we had to clear it out of the way, and then I never asked
Yeah.
about it again, and they just figured, no, we'll just let that one go. I
Yeah,
must have been
I
about
think,
7 or 8.
I think the parents today have it easier because I'm pretty sure you can do the drum kit. That's not the actual drum kit.
Right, well,
Do
we
a
all learn on one of those
Casio.
drum pads,
Right,
we
the
have
drum
a
pad,
different
that's what I
kind
was looking
but,
for, yeah.
But, now it's electric, or
Right.
electronic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Whereas
the
in
old
my
school
house at the playroom, it was the bar stools.
Right, yeah, yeah.
That had a nice muffled sound, but then, yeah, I'm pretty sure my mom regretted getting me the drum kit.
Yeah. Well, it's
And I thought I was good because I was a big fan of Kiss at the time. And I'm sorry to Peter Criss, but the fact is, he wasn't that hard to emulate.
yeah, you could match him beat for beat, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But hats off to any parent who has the patience and the interest in their kids'
Right.
musical
Because it's
forays.
important for the reasons that we just said. It's a very real discipline.
Oh my word! Music in schools, take it out
Yeah,
at your own
that's-
peril
yep.
because it ties to math, it ties to creativity, it ties to relationships,
Yep.
learning how to work together in peer groups.
And it can tie to literature.
Absolutely, yeah.
I remember
the
reading. I remember even back in the late '70s when we were in high school. There were Beatles lyrics in the English books.
Yeah,
I remember
And-
Eleanor Rigby and certain others. So.
right. And certainly the impact on literature on musicians. I mean, Led Zeppelin wrote about Tolkien.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah.
Dylan wrote about a book of poems from the
Right.
17th or 19th
Yeah.
century or whatever the lyric is, and surmised who that particular poet is. I don't happen to recall that, but yeah. And then you have a guy like Gordon Lightfoot, who writes a ballad of a shipwreck
Yeah.
that almost seems like itself is a piece of literature.
Yeah. Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
it's a short story.
Yeah.
It's a very short story.
Yeah.
But it's a story nonetheless,
Yep.
and you get kind of caught up in it. And I'll give prime credit for that. Eleanor Rigby, they
Right.
they basically created a story
Yeah.
from a
From a tombstone.
From a-
Although now that's come to change. Well, no, it really wasn't that tombstone. That was just whatever.
right,
But,
yeah.
there was a tombstone right in their neighborhood that had Eleanor Rigby on it, so I'm going to go with the original.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, there's the coincidence is too great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only recently heard that it was originally had somebody else's name tied
Yeah.
to it, and then they added that name in later. Yeah, that's there's some things, some musicians will never tell, what
Right. Yeah.
what's gone into their lyrics
Right.
and where their influences are.
You brought up Dylan. I heard a Dylan song the other day, and it kind of got me thinking. there are a lot of people. I mean, I know that he has a reputation of being absolute genius. Honestly, I'm not sure if I really see that.
Okay.
I remember the last time I saw Todd Snyder, he told a story about how, when he was just starting off sleeping on everybody's couches, and um, everybody was like, God, Dylan is just such a genius. And he said, I never really got it. And then somebody put on, and I don't remember which album it was, and he said, something, oh, and okay, now I get it. But he didn't, the way he told the story, it wasn't like, did he really get it, or was he just saying that to get laid? kind of, and he never really made it clear, which made the story even cooler. But
Right.
yeah, undeniably, he's written some of the greatest music of the last half of the 20th century. But I guess
Yeah.
I just don't hold him in as high of esteem as a lot of people do. Part of it, I think, is the vocals. He's one of those.
Well, but okay, so then listen to the Jimi Hendrix version of All Along the Watchtower. But the lyrics are still pretty incredible.
Right, or the Stones version of like a Rolling Stone.
Right.
Right.
I mean, or anything the Byrds did with Dylan's music.
Right.
I mean, for me, when I go down the rabbit hole, or if I happen to be listening to, I love the band. I'm a huge fan of the band. I love the band because I love not only that Levon is the great voice of rock and roll, but that Rick Danko and Richard Manuel had just such unique voices, and all three of them brought something different to songs that they led.
Right. And there are so many different paths that you can take and end up at the band.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And Dylan certainly being one of those.
Right.
And when Dylan electrified, that was the band. The band was his electrification.
I read something that lately the big thing are the musical cruises.
Right.
Daltrey did one of those.
Really?
A few years back, and the next year they tried to get him to come back. This was obviously years ago. No, not really interested. But then he found out that was when Levon was struggling with cancer financially, and he told him, "All right, listen. Here's what we're going to do. If you can get it so that I can meet Levon Helm and give my share, my fee to him, then I'll do it." And he had never even met the man. He just held Levon in
such
awe.
high regard.
Yeah.
Which
again, when you have somebody of that stature who holds somebody else in that high of a stature, that speaks volumes.
And that's what we talked about earlier. Everybody's got somebody that they look up to.
Yeah, nobody just started
And
everything.
so
on their own.
here's a good idea. Don't ever look down on anybody.
Yeah, that's a very good idea.
Because nobody wants to be disappointed when they meet their heroes.
Right.
And what you hear time and time again is, we met with that guy, or we got to meet that guy, not even meeting with, but sometimes people get to work with their heroes, and it's pretty incredible. So when that happens, that's just one in a million. I know that there's a lot of guys that Billy Strings wish that he was around for. When he was coming up, he still played with a lot of great musicians.
Well, and what I meant, Entwistle, the guy who introduced us was his drummer, Steve Longo, and I was standing there talking to John, and every now and again, Steve would come back, and I'm sure that they had some sort of
like
cue, you want me to get rid of it, and he didn't. He sat there and we talked, and honestly, one of the things that really I think he kind of sparked up was when I told him The Who by Numbers was my favorite album.
Is that right?
And I said, really? Mine too.
Oh God, mine too.
Yeah.
I had that poster. I bought a poster from the Head Shed.
I remember that. I remember that. It was like that big silk thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, it wasn't silk. It
wasn't paper.
What was the thing that bags, the old coffee bean bags?
Yeah.
What are they called? And flour and so on.
Yeah.
Something sacks.
Yeah.
Whatever that material is. But yeah. They used to, my mom, I remember telling me about how they used to make dresses out of that.
And I can't remember. It was the
but that was the material, and but it was all white. And then,
what was the King Biscuit flour?
Okay.
Was the first one to put their flours in patterned bags because it was during the Depression, and they knew that people were making dresses out of there.
Out of their bags,
Yep.
yeah.
So I don't know if that's where the King Biscuit Flour Hour was kind of a ode to that or what, but
Maybe so.
maybe.
Isn't it funny how different things connect? How are we doing for time?
Oh, yeah, we're running a little late, but that's
Well,
just gonna...
we got, I think we have enough kind of material, kids, for
Yeah.
you all to enjoy this time that we've spent together.
Yeah.
And
I know I
we're,
have.
we're learning how to do this, so if you find our musings interesting, let us know. And if you don't find our musings interesting,
Keep your mouth shut.
no, really let us know. No, if you have ideas, if you say, hey, you guys aren't idiots, you just need to polish here or add some content here, talk about these kinds of things that interest me, then we'll give it a go. And if we
Yes,
don't
we
do
will.
that, then almost kind of leave it to yourself. There'll be people who enjoy this and people who, won't be along for the ride. We're here for those of you who
Well, we
are along
enjoy
for
it,
the
and I'm
ride.
pretty sure that's going to come through. So.
Well, that's the whole reason we're doing this.
Yeah.
People said, "Hey, you guys always talk about this stuff. When you're at parties, wherever you're together, we're drinking beers or we're, doing whatever shenanigans, hanging out in Chuck's pool or
Yep.
whatever, and we're talking about music.
Yep.
And not just that we've been around it since we were kids and interested in it.
Well, we have been though, because
But we have.
we're both the youngest, and we both have older
All
siblings.
right, exactly.
So
Good point.
even though we weren't old enough to remember necessarily the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, we
Right.
certainly,
Right. We were adjacent.
Yep, we were in the
Who
room.
was the guy Ambrose who wrote all about World War II?
Stephen
He
Ambrose,
he wasn't there, but
No.
all those guys came home and he was a kid.
And he looked
it
up
captured
to
him.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
he became an expert. And I would say that's us a little
that's
bit.
kind of that's where we're coming from.
we missed
definitely.
our shot at rock and roll fame. If I would have known that I could play the guitar and sing, I would have played the guitar and sing. I don't think I could when I was younger. My voice came later in life, and I write a little bit, and that all came later in life. But so be it.
Yep.
If that's the way it hits you. And Doug's read more about rock and roll than I could even begin to imagine. So we'll talk about all those things and more. Thanks for joining us. And we're excited to share some of the music and influences and new music.
Yep. Yeah, that's one thing that I think that we really wanted to start this off is we are both kind of tired of nothing good has happened since the 80s, and you're just not you're not looking in the right places.
It keeps happening.
Yeah,
Don't look in the mainstream sources. Big
No.
media is not your opportunity.
No.
Everybody is finding their own place. Carsey Blanton has her own network, has her own followers, and that's the way it goes now.
Yeah.
You've seen a number of small acts that you found out
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
You
Well, again, that Nora Jane Struthers, who
Right.
we met in Maumee, and she's doing really well. She's not gonna be huge, but she's got a good following and great musician, and there's a lot of that out there.
If you got somebody you're really digging these days, share with us.
Yeah, by all means.
We'll say in the comments if this is on YouTube or podcast. Just share your feedback. What you're liking to listen to these days, and either we've been listening to it too, and we'll be happy to chime in, or we haven't,
And we'll look into it
yeah.
because I'm always looking for
always
new.
looking
Yep.
for new. Always looking for new.
Absolutely.
We'll talk a little bit about the local music scene from time to time. Didn't get a chance to this time, but thanks y'all for joining us.
Yep.
I'm John.
I'm Doug.
Take care.
See ya.
All right. Bingo, bango, bongo.
Yep.
So we input to that.
I agree. We did have, even though we didn't talk as long, it was better content.
Yes,
better,
way.
better quality. Yeah.
We for sure.